In the summer of 2000, Blizzard North released Diablo II, the sequel to the hack-and-slash dungeon crawler RPG Diablo. To this day, Diablo II remains very popular among players everywhere, and personally I have to say it is my favorite game of all time. The dark visuals, ambient music, fantastic story, and memorable characters and locations put me in a state of pure enjoyment and nostalgia each time I boot up the game, making me feel like I'm 10 years old again in my basement playing online with my brother and friends all over again. With the release of the 2001 expansion, Lord of Destruction, Diablo II allows players to choose one of 7 classes: Barbarian, Paladin, Sorceress, Necromancer, Amazon, Druid, and Assassin, as you try to stop the demon known as the Lord of Terror Diablo before he can free his brothers and conquer the world of Sanctuary. The game is playable in single player, but the real fun comes from the online multiplayer through the use of Battle.net. Diablo II takes place over the course of 5 chapters, known as acts. Each act is very unique with its own different setting, quests, and characters. Although I feel each act is exactly how it should be to make Diablo II the incredible game that it is, certain acts are more enjoyable than others, and in this video, I'm going to rank the 5 acts of Diablo II from my least to most favorite. Each act has a special place in my heart, and I don't think that any of them are bad, but there can only be one true favorite act. At the bottom of the list is Act 3, where the players sail east to Kuros to try and stop Diablo from freeing his eldest brother, Mephisto. Speaking of Mephisto, the demon known as the Lord of Hatred really is the best thing about this act. Out of all the enemies in the Diablo games, Mephisto is my favorite. He has a scary and badass design along with an awesome lair where you fight him. Before facing Mephisto, you get to explore Travancore, a holy city containing a temple that held Mephisto's soulstone, and fight the corrupted council members there. These areas are really awesome, but outside of Travancore and the Durance of Hate, Act 3 doesn't have too many zones that I'm that fond of. Kuros Docks, the home base of the act, has an interesting design to it, but this makes it hard to navigate and maneuver around to speak to NPCs. Most of the early zones consist of endless jungle, which gets repetitive and makes it easy to get lost. I get that the point is that you're supposed to feel lost and overwhelmed by the massive jungle that is spread due to Mephisto's corruption, but it does get a bit old. As mentioned before, the Zakarum council members and Mephisto are awesome, but the rest of the Act 3 enemies are pretty annoying, especially the Flayer demons. Little bastards. Also, I feel that out of all the quests in the game, Act 3 has some of the least memorable ones. Finding a figurine, a dagger, and a tome just don't have the same resonance as other quests. The quest Colleen's Will, where you forge a flail from scattered body parts, is one of the better ones of the chapter, but feels a bit too similar to the Horadric Staff quest from the previous act, gathering components to piece together an item. With all that said, Act 3 is still enjoyable and an essential piece of the Diablo II puzzle. I love the entire story regarding the Zakarum and how Mephisto's hatred corrupted the lands of Kuros, and the act does a great job of getting that Mesoamerican style. The cinematic following Act 3 is also the best in the whole game in my opinion, as it captures the reunion of the 3 brothers and the transformation of Diablo into his true form as he enters the portal to Hell. However, annoying enemies, repetitive zones, and less memorable quests and NPCs make Act 3 my least favorite. Coming in at number 4 is Act 2, taking place in the desert region near the port city of Lut-Galen as the players try to keep Diablo from setting free his brother, Baal, who is imprisoned within the body of a Horadric mage named Tal Rasha. While Act 3 has quests and zones that I feel are not too memorable, Act 2 has plenty of memorable places and moments. As for the quests, the act starts off with a fun one, delving into the sewers to slay the monster known as Radamant. The Horadric Staff questline sets up the whole plot for Act 2, and features an item used prominently throughout the rest of the game, the Horadric Cube. It felt cool to have to travel all over the desert searching 3 unique dungeons for 3 pieces of a puzzle. However, during this quest you also come across one of the worst places in the whole game, the Maggot Lair. This dungeon is notorious for its narrow walkways, making it impossible for more than one player to move side by side at a time. Trying to attack enemies, such as the annoying swarms of locusts, while being stuck behind the rest of your party is very frustrating, but certainly makes the Maggot Lair unforgettable. The Halls of the Dead and the Claw Viper Temple, the other dungeons of this quest, are very cool and much more enjoyable than the Maggot Lair. However, the most memorable zone in all of Act 2 comes after exploring the bloody floors of the Harem, located underneath Luke Galen's palace. The harem itself is dark and creepy, filled with corpses and blood-stained rugs, with some amazing Middle Eastern-influenced music to set the tone. After traveling through the levels of the harem and the palace cellar, you come to a portal taking you to one of the most interesting and unique zones, the Arcane Sanctuary. The first time I entered this location, I was so intrigued and confused as to where I was, as it felt so out of place to the rest of the game. The Arcane Sanctuary is another dimension created by an old mage named Horizon. This area, like the Maggot Lair, features narrow pathways, but its amazing imagery and ambience set by the sounds and music make it incredibly memorable, and a favorite moment of Act 2. It's here that you find and slay the Summoner, who actually is one of the playable characters, the Sorcerer, from the first Diablo game. The conclusion of Act 2 features what I feel is one of the hardest and scariest boss fights I've ever played. As you enter the chamber where Tal Rasha is imprisoned, hoping to find Baal before Diablo has, you hear the lowest and scariest voice line ever.
Looking for Baal.
You then must battle Duriel, the Lord of Pain, and what a fitting nickname, holy shit. He may not be such a beast nowadays, but back when we were kids, I will never forget Duriel painting the floor with our corpses. I mean so many corpses. There's nowhere to run except taking a portal back to town, so you have to keep moving and get as many hits in as you can before Duriel slaughters you. Some people may find this a reason to dislike Act 2, but I love the fact I can look back on Duriel massacring my friends and I as one of the most hilarious and memorable moments of not just the second act, but the whole game. Some negatives of Act 2 include the massive amounts of poison and lightning damage you have to deal with, the slight repetition of the desert zones, and as previously mentioned, the Maggot Lair. But the positives are great quests like the Herodric Staff and finding Tal Rasha's true tomb, cool enemies like the Greater Mummies and Duriel, memorable zones like the Arcane Sanctuary and the Harem, as well as amazing music that captures the feel of the act perfectly. Before the release of the expansion Lord of Destruction in 2001, there was no such thing as Act 5. I didn't start playing Diablo 2 until a few years after this expansion came out, so Act 5 was always there for me. And it's a good thing too, because Act 5 is a hell of a ride and an epic final chapter to a great game. First of all, Act 5 serves as some very solid expansion content, alongside 2 new playable classes and several new items. Compared to some modern downloadable content, Lord of Destruction was and still is a great value, and in my opinion a must-have for any Diablo 2 player. Act 5 takes place in the homeland of the Barbarians, near Mount Arreat, as you return from Hell to try and stop Baal from corrupting the World Stone. As the Barbarian was the first class I ever played, I always loved the setting of Act 5 taking place in their homeland. Unlike the previous acts, where you as the players feel alone in fighting against the legions of Hell, this act has you teaming up with barbarians fighting to defend their home of Haragith. It feels cool to be fighting alongside others on the battlefields because it is unique compared to other areas in the game. They captured the look of the war going on perfectly, the ground littered with blood and corpses as you try and save prisoners and destroy siege weapons. Because of the constant war going on around you and the threat of Baal taking over Sanctuary looming, the quests of this act all feel important and urgent. After finishing the work on the battlefields in the first couple quests, you must rescue Anya from an ice cavern and defeat the traitor Nilathak. The ice portions of the act are cool because there are no other places like them in the rest of the game. One of my favorite parts of Act 5 is battling the Ancients, a trio of barbarians that guard the entrance to Mount Arreat. These 3 can be difficult, but I always like the area where you fight them and the fight itself. The final quest is to make your way through Mount Arreat and kill Baal in the World Stone Keep. The fight with Baal is always memorable due to it being the final boss, but one of the things that most online Diablo 2 players remember most about Act 5 are Baal runs. Baal runs are public games that players create and join to level up quickly, usually to prepare for the next difficulty level. These runs would consist of facing the 5 waves of enemies that Baal spawns before his boss fight, then leaving and joining a new game and doing the same thing over and over again until you're satisfied with your level, all while Baal laughs endlessly at you. As far as the enemies in Act 5, there is a huge variety to encounter, including massive demons, yetis, and undead fiends, as well as monster types similar to those from previous acts. The large range of monster types in this act is a big plus, and helps you not get bored of what you're fighting. There's something about Act 5 that makes it feel so different from the other 4, but also like it fits right in with the rest of the game. One of the factors for this is due to the atmosphere, and the music plays a huge part of this. Act 5's music all feels like it could be a movie soundtrack. It's all very cinematic and symphonic, making it feel different from the rest of the game's music. However, it still feels very much Diablo and fits the act and the game perfectly. Act 5 ends with Baal being defeated, leaving all 3 prime evils vanquished. However, the World Stone has already been corrupted, so Tyrael destroys it, causing much destruction in the process. This serves as an exciting and satisfying conclusion to a phenomenal game, but it also still leaves you wanting more, which is exactly what any great game should do. Act 5 features fun quests that feel important to the story, taking place in awesome settings, with an epic score underneath it all. When we all played through Diablo II the first time, we were obviously all awaiting our eventual showdown with the Lord of Terror himself, and that moment comes in Act 4. Having entered the portal at the end of Act 3, the players arrive at the Pandemonium Fortress before entering the realms of Hell and putting an end to Diablo. Pandemonium serves as the town hub for Act 4, and although it is small, its design is amazing. The same can be said for Act 4 as a whole. It may be the shortest act, but not 1 second feels like it is filler or unimportant. Everything about Act 4 feels epic. Every quest, every zone, every fight, every moment. The instant you step out of Pandemonium Fortress and enter the outer steppes, you don't feel safe anymore. The dark barren wasteland of the steppes and the plains of despair are populated with tough demons as well as trapped souls suffering for all eternity. The first quest is to slay Iswal, a fallen angel and Tyrael's old lieutenant, and free his spirit. I always really liked the way Iswal looked. His blue and gold colors made him really stand out from other enemies. After defeating the corrupted angel, you enter the City of the Damned, which has a similar dark aesthetic as the previous zones, but also features red fissures in the ground and ruined buildings. After passing through the crumbling City of Evil, you descend down a staircase into one of those fissures, coming to the River of Flame, which is exactly as it sounds. When people think of Hell, this is probably what comes to mind. The second quest has you travel to the Hell Forge within this zone to destroy Mephisto's Soul Stone. The Hell Forge is another awesome looking area, and it felt pretty damn satisfying to get to smash one of the prime evil Soul Stones after coming so far. The third and final quest of Act 4 is the moment all the players were waiting for: to kill Diablo. Crossing the River of Flame takes you to probably my favorite looking area in the game, the Chaos Sanctuary. A badass evil cathedral surrounded by lava. It doesn't get much better than that. No other area or moment in the whole game matches the true fear felt when entering the Chaos Sanctuary and unlocking Diablo's seals. When the final seal is broken and the ground shakes and the lights change, you know it's about to go down. Then you hear the famous voice line,
"Not even death can save you from me."
And you shit your pants. This fight with Diablo and the anticipation building up to it is done so perfectly. It's exactly how a huge boss fight should feel. You should feel scared, and it should be difficult, but it should also be fun and feel rewarding afterwards. And when I think of Diablo, this is the version of Diablo I think of, a big, buff, badass demon, not so much the route they went later. Act 4 is the shortest by far, with only 3 quests as opposed to the usual 6, but no time is wasted and every moment is enjoyable. The enemies you face pose a challenge and look awesome, the zones are incredible, and the quests are fun and feel epic. The act does a perfect job of capturing hell, featuring darkness, desolate jagged wastelands, trapped souls, flames, and evil church imagery. On top of all that, the atmosphere is set flawlessly with fantastic and disturbing music that can only be described as hellish. Sometimes you just can't beat the first. Act 1 is where it all starts, as the players learn of all the horrors that have awoken in Sanctuary, and begin their quest to try and stop them. If I had to use only one word to capture why I love Act 1 the most, it would be atmosphere. The atmosphere of this act is unmatched. It's something that's hard to explain, you just kind of feel it as you're playing. But something about the music mixed with the eerie mystery of the quests you are embarking on, and the dark and disturbing visuals to accompany them just make Act 1 so perfect. When I think of Diablo, I think of Act 1. I think of cathedrals, crypts, caves, and burning villages. The setting and atmosphere alone make this act amazing, but then you look at the story and design and it makes it even better. Every NPC, every quest, every zone, every enemy is so memorable. Everyone remembers Deckard Cain, Akara, Warriv, Charsi, Kasia, and Geed of the Rogue Encampment, and even all the dialogue that they speak to you. While many of the zones do look similar, they also have their unique differences. Stony Field with the Cairn Stones, Dark Wood featuring lots of trees, and Black Marsh housing the Forgotten Tower. This act introduces new players to an array of different monster types, from demonic warriors and shamans, zombies, corrupted rogues, wraiths, massive gargantuan beasts, dog-like demons, spiders, and goatmen. These enemies are mostly easy to kill, but some can provide a slight challenge at times. As for the quests of Act 1, they all feel special and unique. I'll never forget the first time I entered the Bloodmoor, seeking out the Den of Evil. The Den of Evil is a perfect first quest. It's simple, and there isn't much to have to understand other than, this cave is filled with demons, kill them all. It feels like the opening quest of a Dungeons & Dragons campaign, and as a huge D&D nerd, I love it for that. The second quest features some nice continuity from Diablo 1, as you must slay Bloodraven, a corrupted rogue who actually is the rogue playable character from the first Diablo game. After defeating Bloodraven, you can enter two of my favorite dungeons in the whole game, the Crypt and the Mausoleum. These are very short areas, but they have some good loot, amazing music, and I just love the way they look. The third quest may be one of the most important of the whole game, because it reintroduces one of the most iconic characters in the Diablo franchise, Deckard Cain.
Stay a while and listen.
Getting to travel back to Tristram, where the original Diablo game took place, is just so cool. Hearing the music and seeing the town devastated after Diablo's destruction is such a great moment. The fourth quest is completely optional, but it is one of my favorites. Based off of Elizabeth Bathory, you descend underneath the Forgotten Tower to find and defeat the Countess, a woman who bathed in the blood of virgins. The final portion of Act 1 takes place in the Rogue Monastery, which has been overrun with demons. I always love delving through the dark barracks and encountering the Smith, who has one of the best voice lines in the whole game.
I shall make weapons from your bones!
The act concludes with an awesome first boss, the Maiden of Anguish, Andariel. Her throne room looks badass and frightening, filled with pools of blood, corpses, and fire, and slaying Andariel is an epic finale to a phenomenal first act. Act 1 just does everything right, in my opinion. It's definitely the most memorable and nostalgic, a large part of this due to it being the most replayed part of the game, but I think that it being a well-designed act deserves just as much credit. To this day, I still think that the Rogue Encampment music might be my most nostalgic video game music ever. So much that it almost brings a tear to my eye from the memories. I've just heard that song so much, whether it was starting new characters, waiting in town for much longer than you expected because your friend said BRB, hitting town real quick to sell, joining games to hopefully get some sweet gear for free, or just talking to the NPCs to hear more about the rich lore the game has to offer. A combination of amazing quests, characters, locations, ambience, and a little bit of nostalgia makes Act 1 my absolute favorite. Each of the 5 acts of Diablo II are great in their own way. They may have some annoyances, but the positives heavily outweigh the negatives. From saving Deckard Cain, collecting the Herodric Staff, and defeating the 3 prime evils, this game is filled with iconic, memorable, and epic moments that will forever be some of my favorite video game memories of all time. Diablo 2 has some of the best atmosphere I've ever felt playing a game, thanks to its dark visuals and Matt Uelmen's incredible ambient soundtrack. Although I have my criticism of certain aspects of some of the acts, I wouldn't change them at all. Each act was designed to make Diablo 2 the perfect game that it is in my eyes. I'll always remember swimming at the local pool with my brother and friends, discussing which new characters we were going to make when we got home, staying up late, waking up early, acting out our own Diablo moments as we played outside, and even trying to make our own Diablo movie. Diablo 2 is a game that to this day I can boot up and play with friends or by myself, and have just as much fun as I did 14 years ago. Not all games are like that, and that's why I know Diablo 2 is something special. Thanks everyone for watching my countdown ranking the acts of Diablo 2. I hope you enjoyed reliving some memories or experiencing some of Diablo 2 for the first time. I'd love to hear what your favorite and least favorite acts are, as well as some of your Diablo 2 memories, so be sure to comment below. If you like what you've seen, be sure to like this video and subscribe to The Vortex for more. Thanks again for watching.